Okay, we're on lesson 15, and this is going to be an extremely short lesson today, which is great. You guys deserve a little bit of a break. You've watched some really long videos lately. This lesson is shorter because the first half of it was supposed to be story problems, but we were able to cut those completely from this course this semester. So that is great news. So today's lesson will be pretty simple, I think, even for the most part, and definitely a lot shorter than what we've been experiencing. All right, so today all we're covering is one section from chapter 7, and these notes go along with the lesson 15 homework and also the quiz number 7 that will both be available on Thursday, April 16th. Okay, so let's start off first with a definition of a word I know you have all not only heard of in math, but probably have used many times in real life, and that is percent. And so technically the mathy definition of percent means per 100. And that's something you probably knew because you guys know that when you write a percent, you take whatever that number is in front of the percent sign and you just stick it over 100 when you're making it into a fraction. And so that's something we're going to talk about in a moment, but let me give you a little example here using numbers of how we would say this. So let's take, for example, the percent 53%. 53%, this equals the same thing as 53 over 100 according to that definition, because what we're saying here is we're saying 53 per 100. You might remember in our last lesson, lesson 14, I mentioned briefly that the word per means over, and that is the case here. 53 over 100, or divided by, same thing. The word per also means divided by. So that's where we get this definition, per 100, 53 per 100 in this example. All right, today is going to be all about 4 different types of conversions. 2 of them are extremely easy, and then the other 2 are a little tougher, but not bad. It's all really using things that we've already learned in this class. So the first thing we're going to talk about is how to convert a percent into a decimal. How to convert a percent to a decimal. Okay, and this is one of the easiest things you'll have to do in this homework, converting a percent to a decimal. So all you have to do is move the decimal. That's really all. But where and how many places, that's what's important. Move the decimal point 2 places. Point 2 places to the left. Okay, so I'm going to underline some key words there. You're going to move the decimal point 2 places to the left and remove the percent symbol. And that's it. Remove the percent symbol. Okay, so that's all you have to do. It's all about moving that decimal and then just getting rid of the percent symbol. So let's do some examples of that, because that's not bad at all. All right, how about some of these here? The directions that you're going to see that go along with what we just wrote is this. Write each percent as a decimal. All right, and so example number 1. Let's start off really easy. These don't get too terrible, but this is a really easy one, right? Example number 1, 82%. Okay, so we're converting this percent into a decimal. So as we wrote here, move the decimal 2 places to the left. Well, if you look at 82% right now, the decimal is not being shown, but we know that the decimal is there. It's right here after the 2. Okay, every number has a decimal somewhere, even if it's not showing. So we know the decimal's here. So we're going to move it 2 places to the left. So we're going to go 1, 2, and we end up right there. So my final answer is 0.82, and then notice my percent symbol goes away because we're just writing a decimal. So there you go, your final answer there is 0.82. By the way, there is a percent key found on most scientific calculators, but I will tell you, this is just my opinion. I think more often than not, using the percent key on the calculator is just kind of a hassle because once you do a few of these, you'll realize how fast they go when you're just moving a decimal. It's not really worth using, but I'll show you on my picture here again. If you are interested in using the percent symbol, at least on this calculator, it's right above the left parenthesis. So if you're trying to use the percent symbol, what you would want to do is put whatever number in that you're putting in. 53% was our example. You could do 53%. You go 53 and then second left parenthesis to make that a percent. And then if you just hit equals, it would likely give you the decimal. It would tell you that that's 0.53. If not, you could hit equals and then you could convert it into a decimal using this key right here if it gave you a fraction instead, but usually it would give you a decimal. So anyway, it's just something that's probably not worth using because moving a decimal by hand is very easy, but feel free to do that if it indeed helps you. All right, let's look at the next one, 3.9%. All right, 3.9%. This one does have a visible decimal, and we're moving it 2 places to the left. So we're going to go 1, 2, and the thing is, we do run out of numbers. After the 3, there's nothing, so we're going to have to put a 0 in there. We know we're allowed to do that. And so that makes this final answer 0.039. Notice again, the percent symbol goes away, and that's what you want. All right, let's do another example. Example 3. How about one like this, 190%? I know that seems odd to have a percentage over 100, but that could happen. You've probably heard people say the phrase like, I gave it 110%, and that doesn't really make any sense. How can you give something more effort than you're able to give, more than full capacity? That really never made sense using that sort of phrase in real life. However, when we're talking about like percent increases or decreases in terms of maybe profit for a business, you could say, oh yeah, our company, we were up 150% this year with our profits. Things like that make sense for using percentages over 100. So even though you might see something like this in the homework and you might think that looks a little weird because it's over 100, it is possible that a percentage could be over 100. And so when this happens, again, keep in mind, your decimal is there. It's right here at the end of the number on the right end of it. And so if you move it 2 decimal places to the left, you're going to end up right there in between the 1 and the 9. And so your final answer here is 1.9. Now, if any of you put 1.90, again, if we were in class and I was grading it by hand, I would never mark that wrong. And I don't even think my math lab would mark that wrong because there's nothing erroneous about that. However, it is a good idea to just get rid of zeros on the right end of numbers when you don't need them. But again, if you put the 0 there, that should not be a problem. If it ever was a problem in my math lab, please email me because they should not mark that wrong. But notice, again, we got rid of the percentage symbol. Also, one more thing to keep in mind, and this is something that maybe you've already discovered or should make sense to you. If you do have a percentage that is over 100, then your number is going to be greater than the number 1. All right, so you'll notice in these examples, these percentages were both less than 100. So we got decimals like 0.82, 0.039. But here, our percentage was over 100. So we ended up with a 1 point something. If it's, if it's over 400%, then that would be like a 4 point something. So just something to kind of keep in mind as you're going through these. You can kind of check yourself that way. All right, so here's another one, 0.054%. This number is tiny because this is a percentage and it's got a very small decimal in front of that percent symbol. So again, you're going to move the decimal 2 places to the left. In a problem like this, I've seen so many common mistakes over the years where students just, do it too quickly and they're like, oh yeah, and they just move the decimal 2 places to the right and they write 5.4 for the final answer, which is not correct because when you're writing a percentage as a decimal, you got to go to the left every single time. Even though it feels funny in a problem like this, it feels like you should go 2 to the right because 5.4 just kind of looks like it makes sense here. It feels kind of awkward to have to go 2 to the left when you don't even have any numbers and you already have all these numbers, but that is what you have to do. That's the correct way to do this. So we're going to move it 2 to the left. We have to add some more zeros because we ran out of numbers. 0.00054. That's your final answer for this one when we move that decimal 2 to the left. All right, let's talk about one last one. One last example, how about exactly 100%? What about exactly 100%? Well, for this one you might already know. The decimal is right here on the end again. So if you move it 2 places to the left, 1, 2, you end up right there in between the 1 and the 0. So the answer for this one is just the number 1. Again, you could put 1.0 or even 1.00. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just unnecessary to write all of those zeros. And so your answer really for this one is just the number 1. That is equal to 100%. Okay, great. I think that's enough examples of converting from a percent to a decimal, because all we had to do is move the decimal point to the left. Let's do now something a little bit tougher, where we're going to convert a percent into a fraction. So it's a little tougher, but again, this is all using skills that you have already learned in this class. So I think you guys will be really good on this. Okay, here we go. To convert a percent to a fraction. All right, so to convert a percent to a fraction, you first want to, again, remove the percentage symbol. Okay, remove the percent symbol and put the number over 100. And put the number over 100. And then, of course, I'll just add this. Simplify. As you know by now, I'm sure you all know by now, whenever we're working with fractions, we want to simplify always, always, always at the end of the problem. All right, so again, you're going to remove those percentage symbols, and then you're going to put the number over 100 and simplify. All right, let's do some examples of this. Here's what the directions will look like in my math lab. It'll say, write each percent as a fraction or mixed number, depending, right? Or mixed number in simplest form. Okay. Now, if they're giving you directions like this where they give you the option and they're saying you can write it as a fraction or a mixed number, if you end up getting an improper fraction for your answer, then you should be able to put in that improper fraction or write it as a mixed number. If they're giving you permission right here, it says write each percent as a fraction or a mixed number. If they say that to you in the directions, you should be able to write your final answer in either form. Again, if you ever have a problem, just email me, because that should not happen. Okay, so let's take a look at our first example. Let's start off with one that's a little bit easy, 40%. All right, so we're going to write each percent as a fraction or mixed number by using what we just wrote down up here. So the first thing is we're going to remove the percent symbol, and then we're just going to take that number and stick it over 100. So 40 over 100, that's all we do. So this becomes 40 over 100, and then your last step is to simplify. Now you guys know by now, you are more than welcome at this point to go ahead and just put in 40 ABC 100 and then hit enter or equals. You may even want to do, put that number in and then do the second, this key right here. Do this key right here, this key right here will simplify fractions for you. Okay, you can hit that one, second ABC equals, and then it should simplify it for you. Or you could even, if you wanted, you could do top divided by bottom, which gives you a decimal, and then you can just move the decimal over. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. So that's all up to you, however you want to do it. And then, I'm sorry, I said move the decimal over, but then of course you would have to use the fraction to decimal key, decimal to fraction. I just want to make that clear. But anyway, there's a lot of options here. But maybe for the sake of just trying to keep us all together, I'm just going to do this by hand, the old-fashioned way, where we ask ourselves if there's something we can divide out of the top and bottom. And if so, that will simplify our fraction for us all the way. And in this case, yep, the largest number we can take out is in fact a pretty large number, 20. We can divide 20 out of top and bottom, and when we do that, we end up getting 2 over 5, 2/5 for your final answer. Okay, 2/5. So not too bad, right? Not too bad. Not that much worse than having to move a decimal place, but a little bit more work. Okay, what about something like this though? Because again, I'm going to try to show you every type of problem you could see in the homework. You could see an example like this where you have a decimal and a percent together, and you have to write this as a fraction. Well, this really isn't that bad. It's kind of something we just did recently, actually. So remember, the first thing you want to do, remove that percent symbol, and then just put the number over 100. So this just turns into 1.9 over 100. And in one of our lectures very recently, we talked about how if you have a decimal in a fraction like this, all you need to do is move the number's decimal place that has the most decimal places all the way to the end of the number to the right. And in this case, there is no decimal in this number. There's only a decimal here. So we're going to have to move this decimal all the way to the end of the number. So just one place to the right. And whatever you do on the top, you have to do on the bottom. So this decimal is right here right now. So we're going to move it one place to the right as well, which means we have to add a 0. So really, this turns into 19 over 1,000. This turns into 19 over 1,000. And then you would, of course, want to ask yourself, can I simplify any further? Is there anything I can divide out of the top and bottom besides 1? And there's actually nothing. The number 19 has nothing that you can divide out of it besides 1 and 19. So as long as you just test the number 19, if you try on your calculator, 1,000 divided by 19, you will get a nasty decimal, which means that you cannot divide a 19 out of the top and bottom. So you'd be done. That would be all you have to do there. All right, example number 3. How about a percentage that's over 100? How about 125%? Well, this doesn't really make it any harder just because the number is over 100. The only thing it does is at the end of the problem, it's going to give you the option of writing your answer as an improper fraction or a mixed number. So we'll get there in just a moment. The first thing we're going to do is take that number without the percentage symbol and put it over 100. And then we're going to simplify as much as we can. So what can we take out of the top and bottom? We can take out a 25. And when we do that, we get the number 5/4, which is your final answer. There's nothing more you can do to it. 5/4 is totally great. Now, if you don't want to leave it like that, if you would rather have a mixed number, you could either do it by hand or you could use your calculator by using the second ABC key. That will go from an improper to a mixed and vice versa. And so it's the same answer as 1 1/4. Okay, so either answer should be totally acceptable by my math lab. Okay, how about example number 4? This one is kind of tough, I'll be honest, because here you have a mixed number with a percentage sign at the end of it. All right, so this is a little bit different. But if I were you guys, I would still start it off the same way. You don't really treat it any different until you get kind of toward the end. So you're going to say, okay, this just turns into 33 1/3 over 100, right? Just like we've been doing. You drop the percentage symbol and you put that number over 100. So we just did that. We're good. Now, if I were you guys, if you're doing this by hand, I would take this number on top, this numerator, and I would turn it into an improper fraction. Otherwise, it would just be a lot more difficult to do. If you're not doing it by hand, you could just use your calculator and do 33 ABC1 ABC3. So just put in the mixed number and then go divided by 100 and then hit equals. It should give you the right answer, simplified as a fraction. But if not, if you ever, have to do a little bit more, there's a chance they might give it to you as a decimal. And if that's the case, then you just have to use the fraction to decimal key. There's ways around it. But if you are doing it by hand, let's just convert this to an improper fraction. 3 times 33 is 99 plus 1 is 100. So the numerator turns into 100 over 3 all over 100. And that looks nasty, but it's not that bad. Because remember what that means. That means the same thing as 100 over 3 divided by, right? This fraction bar here just means divided by 100. And you guys know that 100 is the same thing as 100 over 1. So really we can take this denominator and just make it 100 over 1. And so now you have two fractions with a division symbol between them, and hopefully we all remember this as well. The first number stays the same, the division turns to multiplication, and then this last fraction flips. So that turns into 1 over 100 because it flips. All right, and then once you get to this point, and you could either simplify by simplifying the diagonals, or you could multiply straight across and then simplify. In this case, I'm just going to multiply straight across and then simplify because I don't do it that often, and some of you prefer that method, so why not? We might as well. So here it's 100 times 1 is 100 over, and then 3 times 100 on the bottom is 300. So you end up with 100 over 300, and of course you can divide something out of top and bottom here. You can divide a 100 out of the top and bottom so that you get for your final answer 1/3. Okay, 1/3. So way back up here at the original problem, 33 1/3%, that equals the same exact thing as the fraction 1/3. Okay, so that it took kind of a lot of work, I'll be honest, with that problem to do it by hand. You know, maybe on that one you would want to use a calculator. I probably would, but I just wanted to show you that you could do it by hand if you had to or if you wanted to, so feel free. All right, let's do one last example of this where I give you a percent and you have to write the fraction as your answer, converting it to a fraction. Okay, so again, what we're going to do is take that number, put it over 100, get rid of the percent symbol. So 400% turns into 400 over 100. And then can you divide something out of top and bottom? Of course. We can divide a 100. And so we are left with 4 over 1. And again, 4 over 1, that should be an acceptable answer. If it's not, again, shoot me the email. But it is also a good habit to get into, to drop the 1 on the bottom. We don't need it. It's unnecessary. So your final answer really is just the number 4. Okay, good. All right, awesome. So far we've covered how to convert a percent into a decimal, and then we've done a percent into a fraction. But now let's talk about going the other way. Let's do a decimal to a percent and a fraction to a percent. Okay, so we're going to go the other way now. All right, so let's talk about how to convert a decimal to a percent. And it's very easy, so we're only going to do maybe 3 examples of this. To convert a decimal to a percent to a percent. Okay, to convert a decimal to a percent, well, we just talked about how to do the opposite. We just talked about how to do percent to a decimal, and we said you have to move the decimal place 2 places to the left. Well, now we're doing the opposite, so what do you think happens? We're going to move the decimal 2 places to the right. Yeah, we're going to go the opposite way this time. So let's write that down. Move the decimal 2 places to the right. The 2 places stays the same, but the right is what's different. We don't go to the left this time, we're going to the right. And then I'll say, I'll say write a percent symbol on the end. Okay, there we go. So we're going to move the decimal 2 places to the right, and then we need to make sure that we write a percent symbol on the end of our answers. All right, let's do like 3 examples. And so here's what my math lab would look like. It might say this: write each decimal as a percent. All right. There we go. Write each decimal as a percent. So example number 1, here's our decimal, 46.7. So first example, 46.7, they want us to take that decimal and write it as a percent. All right, so that means we're just going to simply move that decimal 2 places to the right, and then we are going to add a percent symbol. Now again, kind of the thing that it kind of looks like we should move the decimal 2 places to the left. It's kind of like what looks comfortable, but you're actually moving it to the right 2 places because they want us to write a percent. So that means we have to add a 0. So as crazy as our answer might look, our final answer really is 4,670%. Okay, don't forget that percent symbol on the end. My math lab might set that up for you, but it might not always, so just be aware of that. But yeah, it's a huge percentage. And that should kind of make sense because this decimal was way over 1. Remember how we talked a few moments ago about the fact that 1 is equal to 100%. So if 1 is 100%, the number 46.7 has got to be way more than 100%. And it is. It's 4670, 4,670%. All right, let's try another example. So 0.013. Today's homework, really the important thing with it is reading the question carefully, because you need to know, are they asking me to write the decimal as a percent, or are they asking me to write the percent as a decimal? Because little things like that in the directions are going to make a huge difference. That means, are you moving the decimal to the right or to the left? And so it's very important that you're just very carefully reading every single question. Okay, so this one is 0.013. And so again, we're gonna move the decimal 2 places to the right because we're writing these as percents. So it ends up right there, right in between the 1 and the 3. So your final answer is 1.3, and then of course, tack on that percent symbol. All right, let's do one more. How about the number 0.8? Just 0.8. We want to make that into a percentage. All right, well, again, we're moving it 2 places to the right. 1, we run out of numbers, so 2, so we're going to have to add a 0. So that means my final answer is 80%. Okay, so not bad. And that's really all there is to those. You're not going to really see anything any trickier than what I just showed you. So just be aware that you're moving the decimal 2 to the right if you're writing your decimal as a percent. And that's all there is to it. All right, let's talk about the very last thing that we haven't done yet, and that is converting a fraction to a percent. So let's write down how to do that. To convert a fraction into a percent. Okay, it's our last thing we have to cover for today. To convert a fraction to a percent. Here's what you're going to do. Multiply the numerator by 100. Multiply the numerator by 100. Multiply the numerator by 100. Then divide top by bottom to get a decimal. Then divide top by bottom to get a decimal. Okay? Now, it is possible you may have to write your answer as a mixed number. So that might be applicable as well. So just kind of keep that in mind. It depends what the directions say. So, you know, they may ask for different things. So just be aware of that. And then, of course, attach the percent symbol. I don't want to forget to write that. That's also very important. All right, so multiply the numerator by 100, then divide top by bottom to get a decimal, and attach the percent symbol. Okay, so that's all you have to do. Okay, now there is one other way you could do this. I think I will talk about it right now. So I'll say or, and feel free to write this down. Or what you could do is divide top by bottom first. Divide top by bottom first. Okay, you could do that. And then move the decimal 2 places to the right. And then move the decimal 2 places to the right. Okay, so you are more than welcome to do that, especially those of you using a calculator. You may prefer the second method. You could just take whatever the fraction is that they give you and just do numerator divided by denominator, right? Top divided by bottom. And then you just move your decimal 2 places to the right. Because what you're essentially doing there, if you're using this method, is you're converting the fraction to a decimal by dividing, and then you're converting the decimal to a percent by moving it 2 to the right. So you're just kind of going through like 2 steps there. But if you're using this method, this is really more for those of us doing it by hand. This is also like a 2-step method, so neither one is really better than the other. This one, you still have to begin by doing something. You have to multiply the numerator by 100, then you have to divide top by bottom. Whether you do that second step here by hand or on the calculator, that's totally up to you. But either way, you're going to do about the same amount of work. Let me just write this down. Attach the percent symbol. Of course, I don't want to forget that. That's super important. Attach the percent symbol. That is something you want to make sure that you're doing at the end of all of these problems when they ask you to write a percent. Okay, let's do 3 examples of this, and then I think we're good to go. So let's do 3 examples. I'll try to show you one of each type of thing that you're going to come across in the homework or on the quiz. So let's start with example 1. Actually, let's write some directions. Write each fraction slash mixed number, okay, they could be mixed numbers. Write each fraction or mixed number as a percent. As a percent, okay? Write each fraction slash mixed number as a percent. Okay, here is the first example. How about 7/20? All right, 7/20. We're gonna take that fraction and we're gonna write it as a percent. All right, now you are more than welcome, guys, to do that second method that I gave you on your calculator. You could go ahead right now and just do 7 divided by 20, and your calculator would give you a decimal, and then all you have to do is move the decimal 2 to the right and put a percent symbol on the end. Feel free to go ahead and do that. For those of you that want to see it kind of by hand, I'll show you that first method that we wrote down where I said multiply the numerator by 100. So when you do that, you get 7 times 100, which is 700, and the bottom stays the same. Notice it didn't say anything about the denominator. It just said multiply the numerator by 100. So we get 700/20. Now here's where you could do this by hand. Okay, if you wanted, I'm not gonna go through it, but you could go 20, into 700, and you could go ahead and figure out what the answer is, doing long division by hand, which is not that bad. Or you could just take your calculator and do 700 divided by 20 equals, and when you do that, it's gonna give you 35. And so you don't have to do anything with moving decimal places if you choose this method. You get 35. All you have to do then is put a percent symbol on the end of it. All right, so this method's really not bad at all. All you're doing is multiplying the top by 100, and then you're just dividing by the bottom. 700 divided by 20, you get 35, and then you just stick the percent on the end. So that's not bad. Hopefully those of you that just tried the second method, where you did 7/20 first, hopefully you got 0.35, and then you moved that decimal 2 places to the right to get 35. If you did that, you also arrived at the same answer that we did, the right answer. Okay, let's try another example. How about 2/3? This one is maybe tougher than it might look at first. So 2/3, and this is also one you might have memorized. Let's do it the same way I just did the example 1. I'm gonna multiply the numerator times 100. So that gives me 200/3. 200/3. Okay, so at this point, I can go ahead and I can use my calculator and I can do 200 divided by 3. If I do that, likely what I'm gonna get is 66.666666. Remember, your calculator might end with a 7, and that's only because they round the last number because the calculator runs out of room to keep going with digits. But it's 66.6 repeating. So notice I put the bar over that and just over the repeating part there, the 0.6, and I'm attaching a percent symbol. So that is one answer that's correct. That's an answer that we could give with a decimal in it. Now, if the directions specifically say that they want you to write your final answer as a mixed number and they don't want decimals in your answer, then this is the same thing as 66 2/3%. Okay, now if you didn't just know that or don't want to do it by hand, you could do it by hand. Here, let me show you real quick this 3 into 200. If you were doing this by hand, 200 divided by 3, you could set it up like this. You say, what do you multiply 3 by to get a number super close to 20 without going over? 6. So 6 times 3 is 18. You subtract those 2, you get a 2. Bring down the 0, and you're stuck with the same number again. So you say, what do you multiply 3 by to get a number super close to 20 without going over? The answer is 6. 6 times 3, 18. Subtract, you get a 2 again. And so when this happens, you have to add a decimal in your answer and in the number that you are using in the numerator for your division. And you have to add a 0. And then you have to bring that down, and you get a 20 again. And you can see that this is just going to keep happening. So then 3 times what equals 20? Something close, 6. So 18, you get a 2 again. If you add another 0 and bring it down, you're just going to keep going all day long. It's just going to keep giving you 6s. So that's how you can tell that it's 66.6 repeating by hand. Now, if you want to figure out what it is using this method, it's even easier because you can go like this. All right, so you can go like this, 200 divided by 3. And again, you can say, what do you multiply 3 by? 6, 18, minus 2, bring down the 0. 3 times what is 20 or something close? 6, 18. And you might remember this. I think we did this when we were still face-to-face. If you end up with a 2 down here, and you don't want to keep going and make decimals, because we did this back in chapter 4 before we knew anything about decimals in our class, you end up with a 2. Remember, you could either write it as 66 remainder 2, but that doesn't help us here, or you could say 66 and whatever your remainder is over whatever you're dividing by. Remember that? So that's how you get your 2 answers by hand. I thought I'd just show you that real quick in case you wanted it. So that's how you can get 66 and 2/3, your remainder over your divisor. You get 2/3 there, or you can write it as a decimal, and this just keeps going. So you'd put the bar over the 6. Now, let's say you don't really feel like doing it by hand. You don't want to. That's totally fine as well. Let's say you get this for your answer using your calculator, but the directions say write your answer as a mixed number. Well, all you would have to do then is take this and on your calculator, use the fraction to decimal, decimal to fraction key, and it should give you this. There's a chance it will give you the improper fraction, in which case you'd have to do second ABC, and that's the mixed number to improper, improper to mixed number key, and then it should give you this. So it might take a step or two, but you should be able to get to it with your calculator without too many problems. All right, the last one, example 3. Here we go, last one, 2 1/4. So what happens when they give you a mixed number and they want you to write that as a percent? Well, that actually looks worse than it is. It's really not bad. The only thing you want to keep in mind when you see a problem like this, and there's going to be some of them, I noticed that the last like 2 or 3 problems in the homework all look like this. So what you want to do is just take that mixed number, convert it to an improper fraction if you're using that first method. So 4 times 2 is 8 plus 1 is 9. So this equals the same thing as 9 over 4, right? So all we did there is take that mixed number, change it to an improper fraction. Now we're going to do what we just wrote down a moment ago, multiply the numerator by 100. That's what you have to do when you're writing a fraction as a percent. So then what you end up getting is 900 over 4. 900 over 4, and if you take your calculator or do it by hand, 900 divided by 4, it actually comes out to a nice number. It comes out to the number 225. Nice and even, and so then you just want to stick your percent symbol on the end of that, of course, and you are done. That is it. So when you get to those last few problems, don't think that they're nasty. They're really not that bad. You just turn them into improper, multiply still by 100 on top, and then just divide top by bottom, and not bad. All right, that concludes lesson 15. That was not bad, way shorter than if we had to do those story problems. I hope that's good news to you guys that we were able to cut those. And as always, I hope you guys are doing great. And I will go ahead and get this loaded and posted very shortly. All right, take care, everybody.